In a kingdom, there lived a handsome man named Joe. Joe was very poor. He had a small hut. Near his house, there was a blacksmith furnace. The blacksmith and his son David meant everything to Joe. Joe was a quiet and self respecting person. He stayed busy with his life. He would cut wood from the forest and sell it to make a living. Joe and David were close friends. They were often seen together and cared deeply for one another. In that kingdom, everyone lived a peaceful life. The king was very kind hearted. The king had no son, and the princess Zora was everything to him. The princess was brave and stubborn. The king was always worried about her marriage and often discussed it with the queen, but the queen too seemed helpless in front of their daughter. Princess Zora wanted to marry only someone who would fulfill her three conditions. Princess Zora wanted to marry only someone who could fulfill her three conditions. Many princes, nobles, and even commoners tried their luck at that time, but no one could fulfill even the first condition, and so the princess continued to do as she pleased. One day, while Joe was cutting wood in the forest, he saw an ant near the river being carried away by the current. The ant was moving its legs quickly, trying to avoid drowning. Joe quickly placed a tree leaf in front of it. Ant climbed onto the leaf and saved his life. It seems as if the ant was silently thanking Joe. From the bottom of his heart, Joe smiled and got back to his work. One day, when Joe returned to his hut, he saw a notice posted on it. The notice was about the princess' marriage, inviting all commoners and nobles to participate in the selection process, just like it was around every year. This time, David advised Joe that he should also try his luck. Maybe you are the lucky one, he said. Then both of them burst into laughter. The next morning, while heading towards the forest, Joe heard the fluttering of birds. He saw that a hunter had set traps all over the forest to catch birds. Some of the birds were already trapped and were struggling to free themselves. Joe quickly cut the nest and freed all the birds. The birds flew up, sat in the trees, and promptly flew away. At the same time, Joe cut the remaining nets as well so that no other bird would get trapped. That day, many birds were fluttering around Joe in the air. It seems as if they were singing a joyful song and dancing in celebration. Eventually, this became a daily routine for Joe and the birds, almost like a special bond. Finally, the day arrived when the princess had chosen her life partner. That day, by chance, Joe and David had come together to the royal market to collect a metal melting liquid chemical from their father's friend. David said to Joe, "The market seems a bit empty today." When David inquired, he found out that everyone had gone to the palace on the princess' invitation. David forcefully took Joe to the ceremony. Inside the palace, many people were gathered. Joe unwillingly stood at the corner near a wall, trying to stay out of sight. The princess announced, "Whoever this apple falls into the hands of, I will choose him to be my husband." Naturally, everyone present wished to marry the princess, but none of them were aware of the conditions she had set because they were kept a closely guarded secret. Until now, people had only focused on that one condition. The rest, no one even had a clue about. When the princess threw the apple, it unexpectedly landed in Joe's hand. Everyone turned around to see who the lucky person was. Joe became nervous. David was very happy but also a little worried. But now nothing could be changed. Joe couldn't even refuse, because if he did, the question would be, why did he come at all? A little while later, the princess called Joe inside the palace and told him her first condition. That night, Joe was kept in a room in the palace. The room was filled with the sacks of sugar. The condition was, by morning, not a single grain of sugar should be visible in the room. Was Joe supposed to eat all the sugar in just one night? That night, Joe went deep into thought, wondering how all of this would happen. As he sat there lost in thought, His eyes fell on an ant. He didn't pay much attention to it at first, but the ant was persistently trying to say something. Joe moved closer to the ant and began watching it carefully. Suddenly, a smile appeared on the Joe's face. He realized that this was the same ant whose life he had once saved. And now it seems the aunt wanted to help him in return. After a short while, the aunt went outside, and soon the entire room was filled with ants. The ants quickly got to work, each busy with their task. Joe silently watched this scene unfold. Before dawn, the ants had emptied the entire room, taking everything and storing it underground. When the princess opened the door in the morning, she was astonished to see that the room was empty. Until now, no one had ever been able to fulfill even the first condition said by the princess, and this was no ordinary situation. A strict rule was enforced outside the palace. No one may enter the palace and no one may leave it. So how? What is possible? Still the princess thought to herself, no matter, this man will never be able to complete my second challenge. On the second night, Joe was brought back to the same room. This time, the room was filled with loaves of bread, and the condition was Joe had to eat all of them in a single night. It even possible to Joe? Once again, Joe was troubled and anxious. After some time, Joe heard the sound of some birds near the window. Joe assumed that had it noticed him due to this. Perhaps that's why they had come all the way here searching for him. But Joe was wrong. The birds had come to help him. When Joe opened the window, all the birds flew in and picked up the loaves of the bread and carried them away. Joe smiled again and thanks to God. In the morning, the princess saw many beautiful birds flying around the palace, but she couldn't understand why. The birds kept doing their work until not a single piece of bread was left in the room. That bread had now reached the forest. As soon as the princess opened the room, she saw Joe calmly chewing on a piece of bread. Her eyes widened with shock. She quickly composed herself and left the room feeling worried. But now she was beginning to believe that she was quickly losing her challenges. She wondered, is this man even human or some kind of magical being? At this time, the princess set a truly unique challenge. Joe was brought into the same room at night, but this time the entire room was filled with iron objects, and there was only a single piece of wood. The prince's final challenge was to cut the iron using a piece of wood. Coincidentally, that day David had handed Joe a metal cutting chemical, the same one he had forgotten to take back from Joe. Joe still had that liquid with him. Joe decided to test if the liquid would work, since he did not have much experience with it. To this amazement, as soon as he poured the liquid on the iron, it started to soften and could be cut easily. In this way, Joe cut and melted all the iron in a single night. When the princess entered the room the next morning, she found the wooden piece broken, just as if Joe had used it to cut the iron. Seeing this, the princess was greatly impressed by Joe. She said to Joe, I want to entrust my life in this kingdom to someone capable of taking care of it. I have full confidence in you. You are a wise and capable man. Princess then informed the king and queen of her decision, and thus the princess and the Joe began a beautiful new chapter of their lives together. Even after being a prince, Joe continued visiting the forest to meet the ants and spend time with the birds. David and Joe's friendship remained an example for all. They still enjoyed life together just as they did before. Kindness, humility, and selflessness are powerful virtues that often bring unexpected rewards. Joe's compassion towards even the smallest creatures, ants and birds, earned him their loyalty and help in his most challenging moments. This story teaches us that true strength lies not in wealth or status, but in a good heart and a willingness to help others.